All right, welcome back everybody. So today we're gonna be talking about what to look for if you're looking for a C4 Corvette. So the popularity of these cars are growing rapidly over the last couple of years. The values are kind of going up through the roof right now, and it's kind of a good time to be snatching one up if you are in the market for one. There's still a lot of them out there that need a ton of work, that are like maybe automatic and sitting outside, have higher mileage and stuff like that, are awesome project cars. They have great potential all in all for engine swaps or pretty much anything you want to do. They really are a great car, and it's definitely the time to be grabbing one if you are looking for one, because they probably will be going up even higher than they are right now over the next 5 to 10 years. So I figured I should talk about the differences in the body styles, engines, all that stuff, because we have 84 to 96 and there's a lot of changes along those. But just to kind of show you the differences between each stage, and also the problems to look for if you're in the market to buy one. So a lot of common C4 stuff. That's not anything really to kind of push you away from getting one, but just for things to look for when you're out test driving a car or looking at somebody else's car. So we're gonna start right now with the body styles. Okay, we'll start off with early C4s, mainly because I have one behind me. So 84 to 1990, it's the first body style. Looks like that. So besides that, you're gonna run into 91 to 96, which looks like that. And the main difference that you'll see there is rear bumper and front bumper, which are also interchangeable. If you have an old one, you like the newer front bumper, you can swap all that stuff over. And there's other little body panel features that are different. The fender louvers on the side, which is right here, are different from 84 to 90 to 91 to 96. Maybe the trim's painted, I believe, in 91 to 96 that run along the door there. Other than that, little differences. I'm gonna kind of generalize things just because there are just little subtle things that change through year to year. But pretty much 84 to 1990, you'll get that. So we'll do a quick walk around just to show you, since I have the car here, what it's gonna look like. That is what the early style front bumper looks like. Besides this car being on air ride, this body is all original. And that is what the rear bumper looks like, where the 91 to 96 is more rounded. I will take a quick look at my interior too. This is a bone stock 85 interior. Obviously the seats have been recovered, the wheels new, shifters new, but other than that, that's what it looks like. It's got the digital gauges and a very flat style dash, where the later ones have more of a cockpit design. All right, now I'm gonna talk a little bit about what engines were available in these cars. So they're pretty much all small block 350s. There are different variations of these engines. So the very first year was 1984, and it was a Crossfire fuel injected engine. It had 205 horsepower and actually carried over from the 1982 last of the Stingray body styles. So 84 is just kind of like its own year specific engine in that car, which isn't a bad engine, but also they didn't carry it over. So a lot of people take those out and do all sorts of engine options. But if you have one that's in good shape, it's a perfectly fine engine. So 1985 was a game changer for Corvette. They actually beat out the Porsche 928 in holding the fastest production car record with the L98 two-port injection, which was a whopping 230 horsepower back in 1985. But at the time, it was impressive. And they carried that L98 all the way to 1991. And the horsepower range, I think, from 230 and all the way at the end was like 250, I believe. So that was a good year range, and that's also what's in this car. This is an early one, so this is 230 horsepower from the factory. And then once you get into that body style change in 1991, that is kind of a new body style, but with the two-port injection engine. So that's the last of the two-port engine and the first year for the newer body style with upgraded front and rear bumpers. So in 1992 came the LT1 engine, which was a really great engine at the time. It was 300 horsepower back in 1992, and they did run really strong. They had 300 horsepower, like I said, and that ranged all the way to 1996. So if you get a base model, 92 to 96, it's an LT1 car. And then they had a performance option from 95 to 96, which is the LT4, which is either in the collector edition car or the Grand Sport Corvette, which is blue and had the white stripe all the way up the front and the red sashes, kind of similar color combo to my 73 over there. So they had the LT4, which is a 330 horsepower engine upgrade. So that's pretty much all the 350 engines that you'll come across. So there's also the ZR1, which was their, you know, big dog car of the 80s and 90s. And that horsepower ranged from like 375 to like 405, I believe. Which that is kind of a sought after collector car. But if you're looking at just a base model Corvette, those are the different options through the year range that you're gonna get. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about transmission options. So there are a lot of automatic C4 Corvettes out there, but don't let that deter you if you find the right car. They're great transmissions, they're pretty reliable and dependable for the most part. They can handle a decent amount of power without going crazy. So if you find the right car, it meets all your expectations and it's automatic, grab it up, it's completely fine. So your transmission options for automatic, the earlier cars had the 700R4, which is a 3-speed with an overdrive, and then the later ones were a 4L60E, which are also 3 speeds with an overdrive. So your stick shift options are this. The earlier cars, like my 85, they have a Doug Nash 4+3, which is essentially a 4-speed with 3 extra overdrive gears on it. There's like a box on the back of the transmission. They are decent transes, I guess, when they're running right. I don't know if my other gears work or not. I haven't tested them. And then there's a couple little issues, like I know second gear sometimes are problematic on them. So that year range went all the way up to 1988. So at that point, they went to their first 6-speed, which is a black tag ZF. ZFs are a German company. They make a lot of manual transmissions for BMW, which have a really good reputation, and they're all in all a decent transmission. So they had 2 versions of that. First one was a black tag, and the second one was a blue tag. So the first one is known to be a little noisier the way the gears are cut, and it handles like 450 foot-pounds of torque. And then the later one, the blue tag, handles up to 400 foot-pounds of torque and is essentially more quieter. So those are your transmission options for both auto and stick shift in the C4s. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about what you need to look for when you're buying a C4, or pretty much any car. So the main thing that I look for, this is like my little checklist that I use when I'm buying a car. The first thing is clean title, the mileage on the car, the mileage on the title, and the vehicle history. You kind of want all that to line up. You pretty much want to make sure that if the car says it's got 88,000 miles, that any kind of history lines up with that. Now, if the title says exempt, for example, and the guy saying it has 80-some thousand miles on it, and he has no history of the car, and it looks beat to hell, there's a pretty good chance that it's been smashed a couple times, because Carfax and all that kind of stuff wasn't really around in the 80s, and people would fix their own cars, and it could have been hit a bunch of times and not reported. So you have to keep that in mind, that Carfax isn't the end-all be-all when it comes to finding out really what went on in the history and the life of the car. So all those kind of little things, you want to make sure that kind of adds up. Especially if you're going to spend a lot of money on a car that you want as an investment, you want to make sure that title's clean, all the mileage lines up, and it's got a good service history and history on the title itself, or on the history of the car itself. Now, if you're gonna build like a race car or a street car and you don't care about any of that, salvage title, clean title, and you're gonna put an LS in it and make it like twin turbo or something, like, then you don't have to worry about that. That's mainly for something that you're gonna get, you're gonna hold on to and maybe sell it in 10 years or whatever. You wanna hold on to it as an investment, like I said. So those are the main things that I look for when I'm buying a car to keep for my personal collection. Okay, the second thing, which is a pretty important thing, is engine performance. How's the thing running? Is it overheating? Does it have excessive leaks? Is there a check engine light on? All these questions you really have to ask yourself. Now, if you're not too mechanically savvy, bring a mechanic friend, or take it to a shop and have them go over it. Compression test, cylinder leak down test will tell you a lot. Rear main seal leaking, all that kind of stuff. It's a kind of common thing. You're gonna have leaks and stuff on these older cars, but you wanna make sure that you're not going into something which is gonna cost you a lot of money. Like, you drive around the block, it's fine, but if you drive it for more than 25 minutes, now the thing's overheating. Now you got a head gasket issue. These are things you kind of wanna be aware of before you just impulsively buy it, hop in it, and drive it away. So check those things out. That's probably a really important thing to do, is make sure that thing's running 100%. And the third thing, along with engine performance, is transmission performance. If it's automatic, is it leaking? Is it slipping in gears? Does it feel like it gets stuck in gear? All those little things like that, you really gotta drive it, make sure it's going all the way up and all the way down in all the gears. Just little things like that to look out for with the automatic transmissions. Now, the stick shift stuff, same concept. Does it grind any gear? Does it pop out of gear? Are all the overdrives working if you have a 4+3? The life of the clutch, was the clutch done before? Does it need to be done? You know, make sure the slave cylinder, all that stuff's working. And this is all done pretty much on a test drive or having a mechanic friend or yourself look at it. Just by driving it will tell you a lot. But keep an eye, make sure you go, you know, on the highway, make sure you go through all the gears and all the way back down the gears. Little stuff like that to make sure that you're not just, you know, first and second are good, but there's no third gear, something crazy. Like, so those little things like that, pretty basic, but you want to make sure that everything's working 100%. Okay, number 4, frame and collision damage. So you want to go over this car, even though the history says it's never been hit, you want to go over this thing in detail. Get underneath of it, like if anything looks out of whack, the front bumper's crooked, get a measuring tape, get it on a level surface. Check different, you know, points on the frame. You want to make sure everything's straight and not smashed, especially if the guy's saying that, you know, it's original, it's never been hit, and like the door is all lopsided and crooked, and you can tell there's like an inch of Bondo on it. So those are little things. If you go over it and look at it, you can really find, you know, if something's off. For example, my car, it has all the original body panels on it. The car only has like 68,000 miles on it, but it's been sitting, and I can tell you that it's been repainted. It's kind of obvious. It's got a single stage paint job on it, like a, you know, cheaper and inexpensive paint job someone threw on it. I don't know, maybe late 90s or something. There's no record of it, but when you get on top of it, you can really see all the imperfections and the overspray and little things like that. So open the hood. Get in, you know, all the little detailed areas around the bumper, around the little fender trims. Look for all that kind of stuff, so make sure everything kind of lines up. Doors open and shut nicely. The rear hatch glass opens and shuts nicely. All your body gaps are all, you know, consistent. Little things like that. Get underneath of it. Check for anything odd or bent. You know, don't be afraid to get that measuring tape out and just take some references, because, you know, that little bit of time going over the car is really going to save you, you know, a lot for running into any kind of headaches or anything like that. Okay, number 5. So while you're down there inspecting your frame rails and your body damage, you want to look at the suspension. You want to make sure that there are no cracks in your front and rear spring. You want to check ball joint condition, tie rod condition, power steering rack, power steering pump, if there's any excessive leaks. Most of the suspension stuff is serviceable, so you're gonna have bushings that need to be replaced, you're gonna have ball joints that need to be replaced, but these are just kind of common things, especially with an older car. That stuff is serviceable, so don't let that, you know, deter you if it needs all bushings. It's kind of like one of those things, like this car needs all the bushings done. I've done a couple, but keep an eye on stuff like that too. Okay, number 6. Interior condition and the electrical system on the inside and the outside of the car. So obviously the basic stuff, check your seats, you know, make sure that all the switches work for the windows, all that kind of little stuff like that you would check normally. With the early 80s cars, they have a ton of electrical issues. So the gauge cluster, the power seats, the headlights not working, all that kind of stuff you really want to check. The good news is there are solutions for almost all those problems those cars have because they're so old. All that stuff kind of comes to light through the years, and there's plenty of information out there how to fix everything. Plenty of companies out there making little parts for your gauge cluster and stuff like that. So you want to just make sure all that stuff works and everything functions properly. So keep an eye on all those little details on the inside. All right, so they're pretty much like the basic things to look for when you're looking at one of these cars or any car. But there are like a handful of little like C4 specific things that are kind of really common. One is the headlight motors. They're very problematic and have issues. Weather stripping on these cars, especially if the thing sits outside, they all deteriorate at some point. The interior electrical, like I said, is really big, especially the earlier ones. And then the other one would be like LT1 OptiSpark. it's not like a deal breaker or anything, but they do have a lot of issues, especially if that water pump starts leaking. I had a 95 car before. That was a little bit of an issue at one point. Little things like that are Corvette specific. There's a ton of information out there. Now, if there's anything that I missed in this, feel free to drop it in the comments just to help out any new C4 Corvette buyers, because there's just so much with these cars, and it's a relatively long year span that there are a lot of little changes, a lot of little differences. I try to cover it as best I could, but like I said, if there's anything that you feel is important that I overlooked, drop in the comments so more people can see it and help them when they're looking to buy a car. So if you enjoyed the video, press like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.